Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on today's very special edition of METALCON Online, being presented in partnership with Metal Architecture Magazine, as well as in partnership with Minarc Architecture. We're so very excited to have our presenters today, both Erla and Tryggvi, presenting the session titled Breaking the Cycle of Wildfire Destruction, the Urgent Need for Fire Resilient Construction. We are so happy to have them here. We are also very excited to be presented today by Metal Architecture. Metal Architecture is celebrating 40 years this year. They are the leading authority on the use of metal in architectural applications, building design, educating architects, design professionals, and engineers, engaging in new construction, retrofit, renovation, and modernization of buildings. They are truly a one-stop shop for anything you might need regarding metal and architecture, modernizing use, and everything to do with the blending of metal and architecture. Truly a great partnership. Today's agenda, if you are an AIA member, please take special note of everything that's on the screen today. This is all the items we will be touching base on. This will also be shared later on, and you'll be able to see it in our YouTube that will be posted later on today. Up next, we also have a second presentation done by Metal and Architecture, and that session will be titled the Architecture of Metal, Designing for Resilience, Beauty, and Performance in Coastal Architecture. That's going to be presented by Jeffrey Huber. We're so excited to have that session as well, so join us on June 11th. Also, as many of you know, METALCON is open. Registration is now available to anyone and everyone. Register now for the best price. Prices do go up at the end of July, so get those discount tickets early. We're also very pleased to say that Erla and Tryggvi will be speaking on Wednesday, October 22nd. They'll be our kickoff for that day, and they again will be talking about fire and metal architecture. So a must attend. We hope to see you all in Las Vegas later on this year. How to get your credits or your certification. All you have to do is respond to the survey that's going to pop up on your screen at the end of the session. That survey is incredibly quick and easy. All we really need is your first, your last name, and your email address so we can get that certification to you. If you have any further questions or have any questions regarding receiving additional certifications or anything like that, you can email me. I'm Kaylin, and you can reach me at kaylin@metalcon.com. Finally, a huge thank you to everyone. We do have a survey as well after this, not just for your for your credits, but we do ask that if you can, if you feel so inclined, please respond to that, share your insight, share your thoughts. We would love to see you and see your thoughts on everything. Finally, if you have any technical issues, technical difficulties, you can reach out to me directly in the chat box. That's going to be opened up as soon as I stop talking, and we will love to help you out in any way that we can, whether it's audio issues, visual issues, or technology. I'm happy to help there. So I'm going to hand this over to our two lovely architects today and to Tristan Marks, who's going to be my co-presenter. So here we go. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so I am going to give a few seconds so Tryggvi and Erla will have some time to start their presentation.
Okay. So you want us to start, or?
Go ahead, absolutely. You guys can pull up that your slide deck whenever you're ready.
Got it. Okay, so we come from Iceland, Tryggvi, and do we have the screen now?
We're not seeing your screen quite yet, but while we pull that up, can you let us know how you got started being architects? And
Yeah, absolutely. We both come from Iceland, and I started the route of working with flowers. So interesting.
Oh, wow.
Because flowers, even though they have not much to do with architecture, they do have color and texture, and you put them together in a beautiful way. And I think that's where I came from, and I studied that in Denmark, and I studied Swedish literature in Sweden, and then I moved over here, and we came. We met here, and I came here because there were both of us, because we didn't have at that time there were no architectural schools in Iceland. It was very just basic education there back then, even though now I sound like I'm 100 years old. And Tryggvi, maybe you want to...
Yeah, my story is pretty very similar. I mean, I grew up in a very small town in Iceland, moved to Reykjavik when I was about 12 years old. Started to work in construction about when I was like 17, 18 years old. And I found out that I kind of had opinion about, things. I was looking at plans and I had opinion about like how things were organized. And I remember my boss said, well, why don't you go into, architecture? That sounds like this is, your field. And that's how that started,
He was right.
He was right, yeah. And then for some very weird luck in my life, I ended up here in LA, which is kind of interesting because at this, like as I was saying, there was no schools in Iceland and for architecture, and most people that study either went to Denmark, some of them to Germany, few of them to England, but somehow I met the only person in Iceland that had been to SAIC before me, and introduced me to the school, and 6 months later I was here.
That's basically our backstory, and we ended up working together, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, LA has also been, I mean, it's interesting, just because of like all the mid-century architecture, Lautner, Sindler, Neutra, Pierre Koning, all these architects that we kind of knew about a little bit before when you start just being interesting in architecture. And suddenly you notice there's so much architecture going in this area that when I heard there was a great school here, it made perfect sense to come and be in LA. It was not only the sun and the beaches and the pretty girls at that point, but I found one in the end and married her. And so the reason that we came here was mostly because of the recognition of architecture that was coming from here.
That's awesome. Sorry, Tristan, go ahead.
We have a number of questions actually for you guys as well as we go through this presentation. Now you've answered the main ones. How did you get started? What drew you to LA and Santa Monica? But being transplanted from from Iceland rather, into Santa Monica, when designing your buildings, do you bring any aspects of Nordic architecture with you, with the buildings you design?
Absolutely. And I think what is the most interesting part is that coming from a cold climate, you really take advantage of the weather here, which is always where you put the thermostat, 68, 72 degrees. And you want to integrate outside to your inside world of architecture. So you want to open up, doors and get the weather inside and being able to walk in and out like there's no difference.
I would love. Can we see our screen right now? Is that possible?
No, we can't. I'm happy to walk you through that if need be.
That's okay. I just wanted to show some images of that shows very kind of inspirations of Iceland into, but we can do that a little later. But it's absolutely right. I mean, it's a lot of influence. Iceland is very brutal, rough landscape, a lot of contrast, and it was very, I think, noticeable right in the beginning in our architectural field. And it took us I guess a little bit of time to kind of manage it. When you're young, you kind of have this tendency to overdo things and really not be focused enough in in that field, but you can really see our aspect of how to deal with nature and how to approach it and how to kind of try to be nice to it. I think Erla, you want to, like you always say about like every time we do something, we are interrupting.
Yeah, I think it's really important for architects to know that every time we are interrupting nature, our responsibility is to make it look nice. That's the least we can do. To the nature that we are taking away.
And I think we had that kind of a fantastic opportunity to build a hotel in the middle of a national park in Iceland. It was extremely complicated because every aspect of the land around it was so important, and that taught us a lot of lessons. This is in 15 years ago we did this project, and it became very educational about like how you deal with situation, and if you can take that you learn, even though you're in the national park, and approach every project the same way, it's that means you're doing good things in architecture. You can never, we need housing, we need to live, and people expect to have the quality of life. But our goal as an architect, we really need to be very focused on how we create that.
And I think what Tryggvi was talking about in our slideshow, we actually give samples of, how we've taken nature and brought it into our designs. So just let me know when we can share those
Absolutely.
pictures.
You can share now. And I'd also love to hear, you mentioned utilizing nature. So how do you implement your aspects of design into your projects now?
Sorry,
Yeah.
we were putting this.
Do you see it now?
No, not yet. So
there we go.
Now we're seeing it.
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you? Yes.
So you talked at length, and I think it's a wonderful concept of utilizing nature in your designs. And I'd just love to hear how you re-implement the biophilic aspects of design back into your projects.
Well, it mostly has to be kind of in the material uses when you talk about that, and how the imprint or the footprint of the building, and we put the limitation of what less, building smaller. People come to us with requirements sometimes of extremely large homes and needs because of their situation, how they grew up, and how they usually used to live, and then we come back and say, well, we might be able to combine these things together. These uses are, they have these similarity that can be put into a one room, and make the house, if the footprint and smaller, at the same time that you interrupt the nature less. And then especially here when we're in California, grab the outdoor spaces, like Erla said, the temperature here most of the time is kind of the perfect temperature. So,
but I also think you see it like this picture. Do you see the picture? We have a waterfall, and we have a house we did in Culver City called Sherborne, and you see how we imitated, or like the waterfall in the front of the home. Here also, this is a hotel in Iceland we did in a national forest, and we didn't there's no forest. Well, we have a saying in Iceland: if you get lost in the forest, what do? And the joke is you just stand up, because they don't have any real trees. We have bushes. Anyway, here is the hotel. So it used to be, you see the first part of the building with the black cladding. That's the old used to be a housing for the workers that were building the power plant and taking it to which we use. We use all the hot water in Iceland is natural, and we added, like you can see, the extension is made with the prefabricated concrete panels, and try to minimize, disrupting nature. Tryggvi, you have
No, no, it's
something
fine. No.
beautiful to say here. Here we are, you can see where we are inspired by the white snow to the picture on the left is of the lobby of another hotel we did in Iceland. And this is in the city where we wanted to bring nature in, and the lobby table is inspired by the Icelandic white snow glacier. Well, that's our daughter in the Blue Lagoon, which is endless inspiration, our daughters. This is the Northern Lights bar. So obviously you see the view is so beautiful. It's kind of, we've gotten a lot of attention for the beautiful architecture of this, but I think it's a little bit cheating because we just let the nature be the architecture, which is obviously the best architect we have, Mother Nature.
And this is a great example of metal architecture right there. This is something that you can create using metal, structural metals. You can make these beautiful, fantastic views with glass and just metal in an area that has major earthquakes. Yeah, we're just going to show you some project, but let's move. Yes.
So you mentioned earthquakes, and from where you guys come from and where you moved to California, it seemed like there's a lot of natural disaster and earth moving or fires happening
Yes.
regularly. So we'd love to understand, do you have like tips and tricks for architects that are starting out, especially in terms of natural disaster safety, fire safety, anything along those lines?
So these all the houses we built since 2010 are built with steel, type 2 steel construction. We're big fans of steel construction, and even our ADUs, and I can show you how we do that. Tryggvi, you want to?
Well, with trips, I want to talk to the young architects who start out. I think the most important thing, of course, is education, research. Find out. Because each project is so individually for the location and the area that it's built. You can have. For us, building a project in Iceland, it's completely different than building a project in Santa Monica. We do project even up in Northern California, there, in Switzerland. So it's really a unique situation. So I think in the beginning, as a tricks for a young architect, is really to understand the area where the building is supposed to be constructed, and then start from there. And like we said, try to minimize the impact as much as possible. And then, from there, you can select the material, but not select and stay away from selecting materials because of visual pleasing or visual statics. Try to combine them also with the aspect of, functionality and safety.
Yeah, sustainability.
It's very interesting. We had this conversation with recently about how building codes work. Building codes are only there to keep you safe in that single unit building, you know? So you have 1 hour, you have 2 hours, construction methods and things like that, but those are only done to make sure that you can get out of the building safe, you know? Same with, you know, earthquakes. You know, the building is not supposed to be not damaged after earthquake. It's just supposed to stand up and make sure that you can get out of the building safely. When it comes up to disasters, you know, whatever it is, fires, volcanoes, or something, you know, anything like that, that has this huge destruction going on, then it becomes the unity of the whole area that has to be the area that it can
Survive
survive that disaster, you know. Famous story in Iceland was in the 73 when a volcano erupted right next to a small town. It was threatened to close the harbor. The people came together and put water hoses into the pumps into the ocean and started spraying, you know, thousands of gallons on the hot lava to make it, you know, turn and go the other direction, you know.
Just taking the ocean water, using that. But that shows unity. And what you're saying is when we are having like building codes, adding more wood to it, it makes the house actually keep the fire longer. And that in a unity of group of, you know, in a city, in a group of houses will actually make it more like less safe, because it keeps on burning, it throws the flames. So, you know, we are hoping that type 2 construction can take over the fire zones.
Yeah,
in
so the
those areas.
answer to that is, like I'm saying, that unit, it has to be,
Unity.
yeah, it has to be unity,
Yeah.
and the only way to make that work is everybody come together, you know? In the fire zone, you know, if you are building one house out of 100 out of a metal, and you do one house non-flammable, it won't have a lot of impact. It will have hopefully some impact. But if you get 20 of them and 30 of them in a housing unit of 100, it will do major impact, you know, the spreading of fire.
Also, what we've been doing is building the, you know, panels off site, which creates less waste. And also, you know, wood brings in all kind of problems if it's built wrongly, like it's been done here. Like it does, it has, you know, gives us mold, termites, and it's terrible that you every 10 years you have to tent your house and spray a very toxic material for, you know, every 10 years in a house you're living in. And that's sad. So I think, yeah, there's a lot, you know, to talk about in metal construction.
Now, you were mentioning the use of like type 2 metals for type 2 construction, you know, giving some of the benefits. Now, where you are recently, there's been a lot of wildfires going on in the West Coast, such as the
Terrible.
Palisades and so on. How do you see, ideally in the future, rebuilding and reconstructing a lot of these buildings? What is the role of materials like type 2 steel and so on in preventing these forest fires? You mentioned that it's a lot more fireproof and it can be a bit more resilient, but what would it take for that to be adopted more widespread, especially on the West Coast?
Well, there's the two things it's here. First of all, for us, it's a very simple solution, and it's something that the government has to take control over. It's very simple, like just like in a way, an example, if you build 5 stories taller or taller building in LA, you have to have it type 2 construction, means non-flammable construction. If you build a house in the fire zone, they talk about the resilience. And but we'll talk about the resilience, that's a 2-hour construction on the exterior, or you know, everything outside, 1-hour construction. But the sad thing about that, when you take a type 5 construction and you add resilience to the fire resilience, you're adding fire material to it. You're adding more fuel to the fire, pretty much, when they burn the house. That means your house, when it finally catches on fire, will just burn longer. And that means it will be spread your fire, more. Because the thing about this, you have 100 miles of wind per hour. It's spreading the flame of this just, unbelievably fast. So the only way to stop this is to just simply say non-flammable materials is allowed to build in these areas, which is a simple thing. It's not and that will require these developers to move to different materials. Whereas in the end, they will complain, like every time when you get when Apple comes out with a new iPhone, you complain, I don't get this. This is why is this, why is this? And then after a few years, you love that thing, But that's just how human act when they're pushed to to do something. Second of all, right now we have these, which it makes perfect sense. Like, oh, you have to have this fire zone, and the zone clearing, what they call zone 0, means you have no flammable materials 5 feet around your home, and then they expect you to do a lot of other things, clear all the vegetation around your home. Oh, beautiful. But the problem is that it's a little bit like, in the world of recycling. You're putting the responsibility on the homeowner. These are maybe rented homes. And before you know it, you will have plants up against the wall. You will start building, trellises outside your home, and then this happen again, and the whole thing, burns down. And who's responsible for it? So in our mind, the only solution is just a simple thing. Type 2 construction. It doesn't even have to. They don't even have to write the any new codes or anything. Just slap a type 2 construction in fire zone area. Solution is there.
So I love the fact that you were talking about specific types of construction. Are there any other specific important things that architects don't use that you find important in fire prevention or fire avoidance?
I think another thing that we need to start looking at much better is water conservancy. The water, like, it's so sad. For example, in Palisades, you have the ocean right there, and Tryggvi gave a great story about how Iceland has so much water, but still we use ocean water for the swimming pools and for when we were trying to and when we helped Westman Islands, the little island, to not close in their harbor, we used ocean water. And it's so strange that we can't do. Why is it not done here? We had Pacific Palisades and the ocean right underneath it. It's like so sad. We also we have done a couple of things with water and water conservation, and one of them is like we have the sink that we have made. I was going to show you a picture here. Maybe you.
No,
Sam, that actually the water that we use to wash our hands is used to flush down, used to flush the toilet. And it's so strange that people think that's impossible to not use drinkable water to flush down our own,
waste.
Our own waste, and things like that. That I think it's really important that we conserve our water, use our water wisely. Sorry, you were saying something.
No. I mean, the question was what the architect don't use in the fire zone. I think we kind of, we mentioned kind of most of these, I guess. I think create a fire zone around the building, and that's been talked about for probably 10 or 15 years. We do like in Malibu, in these fire zone where you have to have a fuel modification plan set up for 100 feet around your house and things like that. And still, in these massive wind fire, these houses don't get saved, it's a sad thing. So in the end, I think honestly, the only way to deal with this is to, use non-flammable material on the exterior and the structural aspect of the building. And it's interesting when
I
you
was
go
just
and see
showing
these
them
fires.
pictures of Habitat for Humanity, sorry.
If you go through the fire area and you see the houses that are burned, you can see most of the houses burned from the inside and from the framing of it. You can see the stucco walls. Some pieces are still in a little bit of kind of shape because the stucco doesn't burn, but you can see all the wood inside the framing of it has burned.
And I wanted to talk about these Habitat for Humanity houses. We did 3 of them with the steel construction.
Yeah, so affordability, that's something that always becomes a question for us in the people say, well, steel frame house are so much more expensive, and that's not correct. We proved that wrong. We did 3 houses for Habitat for Humanity on a very strict budget. But that one of the requirements was it needed to be net zero homes, and there was competition between three teams, and we were the only one that was successfully were able to build it on the budget that was given to us.
Everyone could apply. There were 3 teams that were chosen.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure.
So yeah. But the bottom line is it's something that people always think, and it is because of the kind of the norm. There is of course hundred people that can frame a building out of wood, and then there's only one person that can frame it out of metal. And that's something that we need to change. And the only way that changes if you start forcing the use of the right material in the construction industry, And before you know it, everybody would know to do metal buildings, It's not complicated construction methods, And I love that, like few pictures we have on here, you see this is so much lighter to build with. It has so much more durability. It has lower maintenance. It's faster construction.
Higher installation value.
Yeah, well,
No mold,
I'm just
no
talking about the
termite.
steel. Yeah, no mold, no termite. High weather resistance, design flexibility, and then on top of it, it becomes insurance saving when when you tell your insurance person that you're building type 5 and non-flammable structure.
And here is the picture. So we basically just connected the drain straight into the water tank, and the water you use to wash your hands is used to flush the toilet. That's what I wanted to show you. And then we have just a couple of more pictures from the construction site. And as you see, it's we really like metal.
Well, we appreciate that you like metal.
Well, we
We love it as
appreciate
well.
you.
Now, with this focus on sustainability and I mean, in the case of the water tank, flowing the water from the sink into the toilet, very ingenious. Metal sometimes has a reputation for having a bit of a bigger carbon footprint. How do you see using metal but also keeping the carbon footprint of construction down over time?
That is absolutely true. The metal itself has a bigger carbon input than wood, but
Also depends on where you are.
but
Here we are getting wood from
no, it's,
far. Anyway.
making it, yeah. But how it's made, because it needs a lot of energy, a lot of heat. But it's so much less weight and so much less material you need in a metal, structure than in a wood frame structure. And the vastability in a wood construction is so much higher than metal at the same time, And so I don't know. I would love to put that together to see the aspect of it, but I think it's gonna be extremely close, And if not, I think metal is probably gonna come up on the top of it, But-
Also durability.
Yeah, but in the end, if we could come back to the life cycle, you add the life cycle on top of this too, on all the aspect of things that the metal gives that the wood framing does not. We feel extremely comfortable with using and specify metal construction with that, and still calling it as sustainable construction as possible. I mean, of course, we will not do a metal construction in let's just say in Iceland, where the metal construction is not the typical construction methods, or if you go up to Norway and in northern Norway and you say, well, let's do a metal construction where all the wood is, all the manufacturing and all the wood, wood is right there in front of you, So we will, like I said in the beginning, you have to figure out where you're building and what is the best material for the location.
Always.
Always, yeah.
Awesome. So I really appreciate that you kind of shared that, understanding where you are and what needs to be there. So understanding that, how do you feel about the building material, both in the near future and further out? How can we kind of address, adjust, and change our material usage going forward?
Well, there's always some new material coming out every year, every day. There's a different type of concrete every time we turn around. I think I think 3D printing of a home is something it's going to be in the future. We just haven't figured out the right material to use to make that work. We will. Right now we're just using the same traditional material that we're trying to 3D print houses, which is not the ideal, but this is the development we go through. We just have to kind of watch it and follow it, and AI is something that we also will be we will have to watch and follow. I mean, AI will in a way not change a lot in the architectural world. I think you're still going to have the typical developers that are not appreciated in the architecture, and just have people drafting their homes that they want to build, and those will now be done more with AI. But the custom house really related to each properties, AI will never be fully cannot replace that.
And AI only knows what
It's available. Yeah.
we tell
Yeah.
we tell it. We're
Yeah.
it never comes up with new,
Yes.
I think. But
Not now.
what do I know?
We don't know. But all these new technologies is something you just have to
trying to hold on to humanity.
Yeah, you have to just keep up with it, follow it, But I'm excited for we need some new materials coming out. I think we will.
Always.
Yeah.
Amazing. We love to see new materials coming out and
Yeah.
and all that kind of fun stuff. I'd love to understand, are there any most important aspects that you build into buildings or that you recommend being put into buildings that meet the needs of surviving wildfires?
Well, it's
Having water,
yeah.
a little pool of some kind, or
Yeah,
pond, or
yeah.
something you can grab and connect it to the roof sprinklers, or that is always my favorite. Tryggvi also talks about, here we have east wind coming strong with the
Santana
Santana
wind.
to build some kind of a shelter or something. You can close all the windows on that side or metal, definitely.
Yeah, like metal shutters. You can do, there's a way that because you're always dependent on the neighbors. If the neighbor builds a massive, 2-hour resilient, a wood frame building, and when that thing goes on fire, it's gonna be on fire for 6 hours next to your home. And if you want to save your home, you better put some protection, for that. And there's a way you can put walls, screening walls, with sprinkler system in between, so that and those things can stop, save it, hopefully save it, but you never know. And these massive fires, you see, cars melted. You see, the temperature is unbelievable in this area when this happened. But most important is like the community have the way that community can save, leave. I mean, LA has a pretty good system to let people know if they need to evacuate and stuff like that. And I mean, those are the most important things, get people out of these zones as fast as possible.
Now,
when this
earlier,
happens.
oh, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
my apologies. Earlier, you were talking about the importance of matching the material to a location, right? You were talking about, say, if you're building in Norway, you probably want to use timber of some kind because there's a lot of timber around. But another important thing that you mentioned all the way at the beginning is trying to also make the building fit with the environment aesthetically. One thing that you see nowadays, especially with urban architecture, is that there's a lot of kind of monoculture with designs, right? A lot of buildings look the same no matter where you are in the world. What is the importance of having a regional vernacular style, in your opinion?
This
Is
is a
there an
very
importance?
complicated. It's a very complicated question because it's so different where you're located in the world. When you go to Iceland, you see every house is pretty modern and very well modern style homes. You go into old classic, Italian, you see the old classic style. And then you come to America, you have a lot of collaboration of different styles.
See it all.
Yeah, and then everything. You go from, all kind of style, they're all mixed together, like a little bit of the culture. And I think that's fantastic. One of my thoughts, like for the Palisades, where you lost 90% of the homes in that area, and it was very, very kind of maxed at that point, but not overwhelming. It was still the 50s style of the ranch homes were built for the veteran, for their in the 50s after the war. But it was beautiful. It was very unique. You had a modern home, you had a very classical home, and then you had the old home. Now they're all gone. They're all gone, and
it was a beautiful collection.
Yeah, beautiful collection
throughout the year built. And you could see there was built.
Now we have a developer coming in, and the direction of the developer is very controlled by the banks, the money, with the culture in a way, and there's very cookie cutting, homes, and you will go back a little bit in the same feel like you when this was done in the 50s, except much bigger, massively bigger, because of the money and people need. And I think it will take us another 50 years to kind of make that come back together in a little more cultural, thing, and that's what makes it kind of scares me the most.
That's
we won't get that, we won't get that small home next to, a mix of smaller and bigger homes. They'll all just be big homes,
I think also what is so important is anywhere you are in the world and anywhere you are thinking about building, always first look at the lot, we always do sun studies, wind studies, and it really matters because the lot itself can give you so much or work against you if you don't use it right. So using what the land gives you first, before you even start thinking about where am I putting, the living room or the bedrooms, because you first need to know the wind, the sun, and how it all works, because you want to know where you want to use the sun and in the morning, and then where you want to use it in the afternoon, how you want to shelter yourself from the wind, or so very important is to use what you have, and I think that's in every aspect of the word.
Yeah, and that it's kind of the sad point of a lot of these developing home. It becomes just a repetition of the same plan used, whatever that is, in a 90 degrees or whatever. If it's
Which never works because the land.
I mean, it
talks. You have to talk to the land first, and find out what the earth is giving us at each spot or lot or plot or land, before we can even start designing.
So to answer the question, yes, I think we love it. I think this every style of architecture, every style of should be allowed as long it has appreciation to the location and and build this kind of build, like I said, just build the right way. I mean, the rest of it is really just style,
Just do it right.
Yeah, style.
Amazing. So we are coming close on the end of our session. Tristan, did you have any final questions for Tryggvi and Erla?
I actually thank you very much for answering the questions that I've had. It was a very, very informative session. Thank you.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. Tryggvi and Erla, I'm just going to ask you one final question. We don't have anyone that has asked a question in the webinar chat. Actually, we do have one that just came through. So this is coming from Chris Lawrence. And Chris Lawrence is asking, how many residential builders are using steel? And Tryggvi and Erla, have you seen that on the rise? Have you seen more people using steel of late, specifically in your area?
So like Tryggvi said, because it's not mandatory, because the building code doesn't push it, which we think should be in fire-prone areas, should be an absolute, no-brainer. Then no, I unfortunately I don't see enough of them or more.
No, we absolutely not see enough of them. They are a little more. I mean, we have trained, just got in this 20 years of business where we've been doing metal studs. We have trained numerous people to use it, and just we have to keep on going, But we are everybody I know in the residential architecture, and all my colleagues, even though I'm pushing them and telling them, it always goes back to the wood framing. This is just the norm. It's easier. They don't have to go through the headache of it. They don't have to go through the finding the right people. We ended up getting our contractor's license, 10 years ago, just because we were just so sick and tired of having people say, I don't know how to build it. We can't build this. We don't know how to build this, So we said, well, let us take care of the framing aspect of the metal, and then you take over the house again. It's a very unique situation. The construction mentality, it's so hard to change. It's so massive in the way that this is the way we've always done it, and this is the way we will keep on doing it until somebody will force us to not. We can't do it.
Okay. And I do have a few more questions that are coming through.
Okay.
First one is, what is the biggest barrier for entry for more contractors, architects, and consumers to move towards metal?
I think it's the knowledge. It's like, I mean, of course, it's first of all, the architectural firms that do mostly restaurants, they're geared for detailing around wood framing, you know. So it's a little bit of value that will take you to change it into a metal framing, and it's everywhere in all the aspects of, you know, structural engineering. All these, you know, all these firms are used to do the one type of construction. When they are moved to the second, you know, type two or metal construction, it becomes a new set of plans for them, you know, because all the aspects of the detailing, structural, thermally broken wall system, and all that for or things that has to be thought out. So it's more work. So it's and most architects, if they want to change, uh, they would like to, you know, put that cost of the on the client, and then it becomes, you know, expensive, you know, change for them. So they have to invest. They do have to invest to make that transition, you know. And the only way you can like I said, is if they do that, is if you force them that this is the only way we're allowed to build. And I always go back to this. I mean, for us, we can talk and talk and talk and say this needs to be done this way, but in the end, people do what's easiest for them, you know. And in the end, the homeowner, if he is not like, I want this to be fireproof home, he's just going to look at the hardwood floors, he's going to look at the kitchen, he's going to look at the tiles and the stone finishing on it when he buys a house. He's not going to really ask what kind of framing is in your building, you know.
Now, another question that came in along that same topic is, do you think there can be more done to help drive education that might lead to that adoption of a metal framing? Or do you feel it's just only within the realm of code and policy that this will work?
Code and policy will drive the education.
Yeah, code and policy will drive the education, and also, which we've been a little bit frustrated with why we have two massive steel benders here, like a manufacturing for metal studs in our area right here. You know, Contractor and Semco. They're huge, you know, huge manufacturing in this area. And neither of them has been driving kind of like after this wildfire coming out. Come on, guys! And you mean that this is something that needs to be lobbied, and we are having conversation finally with Contractor right now, and we're going to start having the conversation with AIA, and you know, trying to make sure this comes out and lobby that this will be done. But at the same time, yes, there needs to be more education around, and that these manufacturing, you know, metal manufacturing, they should be, you mean, that should be available for them, you know, this information that both engineer and architects need to create their documentation for permits, you know.
That's amazing. And we're with you. We all believe that there's so many ways we can approach this and kind of make steel and make metal just a more prominent aspect of our industry. And we're looking forward to seeing what comes up in the next couple of years and in the next code cycles that can really push that forward. Not just in California, but in Florida and everywhere else.
Everywhere. I think it's, you know, becoming a most biggest part of the world.
And I mean, it's great to mix. Like in you saw the picture of the hotel. We have that great mix of metal architecture and concrete architecture, and these are always material that go well together. You know.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we are coming up on our time. I'm not seeing any other questions here in the chat. We do have one more that came through in Q&A.
Good.
You guys are very popular. So what should metal manufacturers be doing to expand and drive more metal influence? Are you thinking architectural lunch and learns, lobbying, continuing education classes? What's your honest opinion on that?
All of them, all of this, exactly what we're talking about, you know. This is exactly, you know, and have it needs to be. It's kind of interesting. The developer is not the person that wants to change. The contractor that has been building for 20 years or 30 years of wood frame building, he has no interest to change. The changes come from the homeowner and from the homeowner, and then driven by the architect or driven by the architects. So if
and the construction, I mean the cost. This is always the cost.
Yeah.
If they don't know
if
they don't know how to build it, then the cost goes out of the equation. And
education of
I mean,
absolutely budgeting cost.
Yeah.
And approve that this doesn't have to be more expensive than a normal home, and that's something that the metal manufacturing they need to be lobbying this with both homeowner get their words out that this is how you should be rebuilding your home in the Palisades, and then lobbying learning to architects and structural engineering that tell them that we will help you to get through this when you have to go through these changes in your thing. We will stand by you and help you make that work. And if you get that help, then they feel more comfortable to make that change.
Amazing. So now I think we're good with questions. But
I hope I've answered the questions.
Yeah.
you have, and then some. You guys have been absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
I'm
you're
so myself and the entire METALCON community are so greatly appreciative of both you, Tryggvi and Erla, and Minarc as well. And again, we're incredibly thankful for our partnership with Metal and Architecture. Everyone who's listening today, please go and check out Metal and Architecture at their website. They have lots of additional information, tons of amazing articles, and some fantastic additional information beyond what we can share on these very quick webinars. So we appreciate everyone. Once again, thank you to our special presentation today, and thank you to our presenters, Tryggvi and Erla of Minarc. We hope to see you guys soon at our next METALCON Online, also being presented by Metal and Architecture magazine. That's coming up in the middle of June. Yes, the middle of June.
That's different.
So excited to have you all there. So I am going to say thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
With you here. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.